The individual pieces of my cutting board are ready to be glued into a single panel. But before I slap glue on everything and wrench down the clamps, I like to take a few steps to prepare for the assembly. First, I consider the grain. Now, if this were something like a raised panel for a cabinet door, my primary concern would be aesthetic. So I would arrange the boards so that the grain had the best appearance in the finished panel. For our cutting board, however, I'm more concerned with the grain direction for planing. So I try to arrange all the boards so that the grain of each board is running in the same direction to make planing easier. With the grain of all 5 boards running in the same direction, once the panel's glued up, I'll be able to plane it from end to end, and I won't have to worry about adjacent boards having grain running in opposite directions and getting tear out at the glue lines. Now, once I have the boards arranged the way I want them for grain direction, I'm actually going to flip them over because I want to put the planed face down. But I want to make sure I keep them in the same orientation. And then I'm going to clamp them up dry so that I can get a good check of the fit of each joint before we apply any glue. Now, you shouldn't have to use excessive force to close the joints. And I just want to check and see that I don't have any gaps and that everything closes up nice and tight. If there are any gaps noticed during the dry fit, you want to address them before you apply any glue. So take the assembly apart and check the 2 sides of the mating joint with your straight edge and your tri-square and make any adjustments that you need to so that joint will close tightly before you put any glue on. Once I have a successful dry assembly, I get all of the supplies that I need ready. My clamps are close by, my glue and applicators are all within reach, and I have water and paper towels and other cleaning supplies at the ready to take care of any squeeze out. I also take care of any other business that I might need to before I start assembly. Use the bathroom, turn off the phone, and let other people nearby know that I'm going to be doing an assembly. I do whatever I can to avoid any distractions or interruptions. Glue ups don't have to be stressful. We make them stressful by being unprepared and getting distracted. By making the proper preparations and making sure to avoid distractions, you can have much less anxiety during glue ups. With my preparations made, I'm going to go ahead and start to apply the glue. And I'm only going to apply it to one side. I found from my experience that as long as you apply enough glue to the one side and get that side adequately wet with glue, there's really no need to put glue on both sides of the joint. Adding glue to both sides of the joint, especially in excess, just leads to way too much squeeze out. And you end up really just wasting glue. So you really only need to put it on one side of the joint. Just make sure you've got your joint adequately wet. Now with the glue applied to all 4 joints, I'll make sure I turn the parts down in the correct orientation. And I like to rub the parts together. This helps to spread the glue evenly among the 2 pieces, and it also helps to rub some of the glue out and actually make the pieces bite together. It gives you a little bit more tack, and it makes sure that the glue actually grabs and you'll get less slippage when you start to tighten the clamps. Once I have everything rubbed together and aligned, then I can start to add the clamping pressure. And I want to do this gradually. I'm not going to wrench down on one clamp and before I get any of the other clamps on. We'll tighten each clamp lightly. Make adjustments. Make sure everything is pushed down, and we can start to gradually increase the clamping pressure. So, as I mentioned earlier, there's no need to wrench down on these clamps as hard as you possibly can. You shouldn't have to close the clamps that tight. Get them tight, close the joints, and let it be. If you put too much clamping pressure on, you run the risk of actually creating twist or bow in your final panel. So you really don't want to do that. Now, the bottle says to let this set for 20 to 30 minutes. So I'll probably let this set for 20 to 30 minutes. And then I'll come back and start to remove some of the squeeze out. But once I remove the squeeze out, then I'm going to put the clamps back on. I'll take the clamps off one at a time, remove the squeeze out under that clamp and put the clamp back on, and we'll let it sit overnight. Then we'll be ready to do the final sizing on this panel.